Living the day when the sky is rotting, blood-ridden corpses lie still on the floor. It tortures my mind as I wait for my life to end. He plays me in games as he talks to my loved ones. He reads me a novel of all.
Hi all, thanks for coming back. Hi all, thanks for coming back. Today we're going to be talking about The Fly, 1986 drama horror sci-fi film, written and directed by David Cronenberg, the great David Cronenberg, most famous for his twisted body horror sci-fi horror films. Short premise for the movie: brilliant but eccentric scientist begins to transform into a giant man/fly hybrid after one of his experiments goes horribly wrong.
Decimation, breakdown, and reformation is inherently purging.
The Fly 1986 stars Jeff Goldblum of Jurassic Park fame, as well as many memes on the internet. Gina Davis
Cheeseburger?
of movies like Quick Change and one of my personal favorites, Hero.
Was a big-time reporter.
For excellence in the pursuit of truth.
And John Getz. My favorite movie with him in it, other than this, would have to be Men at Work, for sure. Plays a really good villain in that movie. Although this movie is a remake, it fits perfectly within David Cronenberg's huge catalog. The original Fly came out in 1958. It featured Vincent Price, among other actors. The original launched a franchise which had several films. The Fly remake only had one sequel, The Fly 2, with Eric Stoltz playing the love child of Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum's characters from the first The Fly. It was not as successful, so there wasn't another sequel. Other classic David Cronenberg body horror films and just overall sci-fi horror films were Scanners. That launched a fairly successful film franchise, even though a lot of it was direct-to-video. Then you got Videodrome, you got Dead Ringers, The Dead Zone, which was another adaptation, and Existence. The list goes on and on.
Our deepest fears.
Cronenberg would also show up in several acting parts. The most substantial, as far as screen time goes, would have to be Clive Barker's Nightbreed.
Here's the answer.
Little fun fact here for you: Jeff Goldblum actually got Gina Davis the role, or suggested to David Cronenberg that she would be right for it. They were an item at the time, and it shows in the film. Their chemistry is one of the greatest and most powerful chemistries I've ever seen in cinema history, I think. That's why The Fly is up there with one of my favorite films, but also one of my favorite tragic love stories, and favorite horror films. The Fly is one of those movies that's been with me forever, and every time I watch it, I feel closer to it, and I've grown with the film instead of, in other cases, you grow out of films, or who you grow into doesn't really complement the film too well, so you watch it and you're like, oh, what was I thinking? And the nostalgia isn't enough to sustain your love for the piece, but not for The Fly. The Fly is one of my all-time favorites. Very, very powerful and moving film. Another fun fact about The Fly: Mel Brooks was actually a producer on this film. Even though it was deserved, Jeff Goldblum sadly did not win or was even nominated for an Oscar for this performance. It was one of the greatest performances ever, I think, and definitely one of the greatest of his career. Yet he was infamously snubbed for the statue. The Fly did, however, win Best Visual Effects at the Oscars that year, and that was very deserved. Such a gross movie, but in the best way. Best scene, for me, would have to be one of two. The tragic scene where Gina Davis has to leave, and she doesn't return, and Jeff Goldblum gets drunk and paranoid, and it's what pushes him into rushing his experiment and stepping into the teleporter, and the rest is history. The other for me has to be Jeff Goldblum's Seth Brundle character. He is going mad and getting restless, and he goes out in the town and picks up this woman, and he gets into an arm wrestling contest, and he breaks the guy's arm in two, and then he goes back to his apartment with the girl, and Gina Davis shows up, and it's a mixture of concern for the woman, but also jealousy, and just so many emotions, and it's so going on in that scene. It's so complex. I would have to go with that one. That an entire segment is extremely effective. Best effect for me would have to be when Jeff Goldblum is with Gina Davis. He's got the cancerous face and arms and hands, everything. He can barely walk, and he, without thinking, throws up onto his donut to eat it, to suck it back up like a fly would, and this really grosses out Gina Davis.
That's disgusting.
And it grosses out the audience as well, and everybody who's seen it has had the same effect. But it's like I said, it's gross, but it's that giggly kind of gross, Best character, without a doubt, is Seth Brundle, Jeff Goldblum's character. It's a really complex, tragic story of his demise and deterioration. It's just a really, good, fun guy, full of hope, loves science, and he gets the shit end of the stick. He does. Thanks again for watching, folks. I'll see you on the next one.